Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Attorney General William Barr directed the Justice Department to resume the use of the death penalty, asking the Federal Bureau of Prisons to schedule executions for 5 death row prisoners. The federal government has not put a prisoner to death since 2003. All 5 prisoners slated for death were convicted of killing children. Robert Dunham, director of the Death Penalty Information Center, says it appears they were carefully selected to tamp down public opposition to resuming federal executions.
And I think the fact that the 5 cases were selected because of factors that are irrelevant to federal jurisdiction underscores that these cases were not chosen because they justify the federal death penalty. They were chosen because they were designed to inflame the public.
According to the Death Penalty Information Center, over 160 people in the U.S. who had been wrongly convicted and sentenced to death have been exonerated since 1973. We'll have more on the Trump administration's move to reinstate federal executions after headlines. In Georgia, a 44-year-old Mexican man died in the custody of Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Before his death Wednesday, Pedro Arriaga Santoya complained he was experiencing abdominal pain while jailed at the Stewart Detention Center in Lumpkin, Georgia. He was taken to a nearby hospital and died in intensive care 2 days later of cardiopulmonary arrest. Arriaga Santoya is the 7th person to die since October after being jailed by ICE. His death follows several others in recent years at the Stewart Detention Center, including 2 suicides. Attorney Azadeh Shashahani of the group Project South said, quote, "We've been raising the alarm about the horrific conditions at the Stewart Detention Center for many years. Our calls for accountability and redress have fallen on deaf ears. How many more immigrants should perish at this awful place, rife with human rights abuses, before it's shut down?" she asked. The Trump administration is threatening to impose a travel ban on Guatemalans unless leaders of the Central American country take drastic steps to curb undocumented immigration northward. On Wednesday, Trump also announced plans to take severe actions against the Guatemalan government, including enforcing tariffs on remittances sent by Guatemalans living in the U.S. Trump's threats come after Guatemalan President Jimmy Morales failed to sign a safe third country agreement with the United States. The agreement would have required Guatemala to take in asylum seekers from around the world who originally fled to the United States in hopes of finding refuge. The Guatemalan courts said no. Oklahoma Republican Senator Jim Inhofe said Thursday plans to jail 1,600 migrant children at the Fort Sill U.S. Army base have been halted. Inhofe's announcement came just days after hundreds of protesters shut down the entrance to Fort Sill as part of a series of protests against Republican Governor Kevin Stitt's efforts to imprison migrant children there. Fort Sill was used during World War II to incarcerate Japanese Americans. It was also once a prison for Native Americans. In the Mediterranean, as many as 150 people are feared dead after a pair of boats overloaded with migrants capsized off the coast of Libya Thursday. This is Abdullah Ahmed Abdullah, a man from Eritrea who survived the disaster.
There were 300 of us in the boat, and then water came in. 100 people were rescued, but the rest all died. The women, children, and girls all died. Glory to God, we started swimming for almost 7 hours, and then we were rescued by fishermen, almost 100 people. We've been here for 2 days, and no one has come to take us. There's been a dead body here with us for the past 2 days. Glory to God, it is like we were fighting death in the sea, and now we are fighting death on the ground.
It appears to be the deadliest shipwreck in the Mediterranean this year. The International Organization for Migration says nearly 700 people have died attempting the perilous crossing from North Africa to Europe in 2019. In Europe, at least 5 people have died as a massive heat wave grips much of the continent, shattering record-high temperatures, many of which were set during a previous heat wave just weeks ago. Thermometers in Paris clocked temperatures of nearly 110 degrees Fahrenheit, an all-time high, with new records also set in Belgium, Germany, and the Netherlands. In Alaska, a series of wildfires driven by record-high temperatures has consumed more than 1 million acres of forest. Similar fires in Greenland and Siberia have combined to make 2019's Arctic wildfires unprecedented in recorded history. The fires come as new climate data reveal that last month was the hottest June ever observed, with July on pace to become Earth's hottest month on record. California state officials have signed a deal with 4 major automakers to reduce greenhouse emissions from cars and trucks, defying a White House bid to roll back Obama-era fuel efficiency standards. The deal between California and Ford, Honda, Volkswagen and BMW would see passenger vehicles average about 50 miles per gallon by 2026. The Trump administration's proposed freezing auto efficiency at 2020 levels are around 37 miles a gallon. Auto emissions are California's single largest source of greenhouse gases, and improving fuel efficiency is critical to meeting California's goals in combating climate change. Minnesota Congressmember Ilhan Omar Thursday introduced a bill that would end the use of toxic landfills while transitioning the U.S. to a zero-waste economy as part of the Green New Deal. Congressmember Omar says the Zero Waste Act would create a federal grant program to help local cities invest in zero-waste initiatives.
The country generates over 250 million tons of trash each year. Right now, most of that trash does not get recycled or composted or reused. Instead, it ends up in landfills, in incinerators, fueling our climate crisis and polluting the communities who live near these toxic sites. The only way to combat this crisis is to move to zero-waste economy.
The Zero Waste Act is co-sponsored by Democratic Congressmembers Deb Haaland of New Mexico and Earl Blumenauer of Oregon. The Senate Intelligence Committee concluded Thursday Russian hackers targeted election systems in all 50 U.S. states during the 2016 election, a much wider operation than previously reported. The committee's heavily redacted report found no evidence that any votes were changed as a result of the hacking efforts, but it found hackers were in a position to delete or change voter data in the state of Illinois. The report came just one day after former special counsel Robert Mueller told lawmakers on Capitol Hill that the Russian government interfered in the 2016 election in a sweeping and systematic fashion. Despite Mueller's latest warning, Senate Republicans blocked a pair of election security bills this week. In Russia, Moscow police have raided the homes of several opposition politicians, including longtime Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny, ahead of a planned protest tomorrow calling for free and fair elections. The raids came just weeks after election officials in Moscow rejected the applications of dozens of opposition candidates to be on the ballot during upcoming city council elections. In New York City, the CEO of a police and military supply company has stepped down from the board of directors of the Whitney Museum after activists waged a campaign to have him removed. Warren Kanders, CEO of the tear gas manufacturer Safariland, was the target of nonviolent protests staged both inside and outside the famed art museum. Activists say Safariland played a major role in suppressing popular movements in Standing Rock, Ferguson, and Palestine, and that Safariland supplied tear gas fired at migrant families seeking asylum at the U.S.-Mexico border. Federal authorities have placed the serial child sex abuser Jeffrey Epstein on a suicide watch after he was reportedly found unconscious in his Manhattan jail cell with marks on his neck. It's not clear whether the injuries Epstein received Tuesday were self-inflicted. Epstein has pleaded not guilty to federal charges of sex trafficking minors after his arrest earlier this month. In 2008, Jeffrey Epstein was charged with molesting and trafficking dozens and potentially hundreds of underage girls in Florida, but he ended up serving just 13 months in county jail after Alex Acosta, the U.S. attorney in Florida, who later became Trump's labor secretary before resigning this month, cut what's been described as one of the most lenient deals for a serial child sex offender in history. Meanwhile, new details have emerged linking Epstein to other powerful men accused or convicted of sexual crimes. New York Magazine reports Jeffrey Epstein repeatedly conferred with former TV news host Charlie Rose about hiring young women as assistants. 3 of them were later hired, including one woman hired at age 22 who said of her experience, quote, "I was being offered up for abuse." Charlie Rose has been accused by 27 women of sexual misconduct spanning 3 decades. Another of the women referred by Epstein to Rose was described in a call log as, quote, "the world's most perfect assistant. She used to work for Harvey Weinstein." Epstein told Rose's office Rose would be, quote, lucky if he can get her. Weinstein has been accused of rape, sexual assault, and sexual harassment by over 100 women and faces trial on rape charges in New York in September. Federal regulators have recalled textured breast implants manufactured by the pharmaceutical company Allergan after linking them to an increasing number of deaths and illnesses. Medical researchers say the implants can lead to a rare form of lymphoma, an immune system cancer that begins in the tissues surrounding implant sites. According to the FDA, there have been 570 confirmed cases of lymphoma worldwide, with 4/5 of the cases linked to Allergan implants. 3 white students at the University of Mississippi face possible federal civil rights charges after a photograph emerged showing the fraternity brothers posing with guns next to a bullet-riddled sign honoring Emmett Till, the 14-year-old African-American boy whose killing 64 years ago remains one of the most horrific examples of racial terror in the Jim Crow South. The photo, posted to social media by one of the young men, was taken at the site where Till's body was recovered from the Tallahatchie River in 1955. It was this latest act of vandalism targeting the memorial plaque set up by the Emmett Till Memorial Commission after a similar desecration in August of last year. Thursday would have been Emmett Till's 78th birthday. And a 46-year-old graphic designer and registered Republican has been identified as the creator of an altered presidential seal mocking Donald Trump that briefly appeared behind the president at an event in Washington, D.C. this week. Charles Lizotte told the Washington Post he doesn't know how his creation ended up being projected on a screen behind Trump as the president addressed the Teen Student Action Summit on Tuesday. But he suspects a rogue staffer may have intentionally swapped out the image. The seal shows the traditional U.S. bald eagle with 2 heads, evoking the double-headed eagle in Russia's coat of arms. Instead of arrows and an olive branch, the eagle is clutching golf clubs and cash in its talons. And the banner with the Latin phrase e pluribus unum has been changed to a Spanish phrase that translates as 45 is a puppet. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.